Maybe CEOs just shouldn't get paid so much. I made an eye-opening visual to help us comprehend just how absurdly over the top some CEO pay packages are today. Pay attention. Most of us can't comprehend how big a billion is or how much wealth a billionaire possesses. This little square is equal to 100,000. This little grid has 216 squares, equivalent to 21,600,000. I need 23 of these little grids to equal $500 million, and 46 of them to equal 1 billion. And yes, there are CEOs whose entire pay packages equate to billions. One of them is Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir. If you want to visualize the actual compensation paid to Palantir's CEO, bonuses, stocks, options, future stock options, I need 268 more of these little grids of 21,600,000 to equal $6.8 billion. And that is why you will hear me say this until the day I fucking die. No individual person needs this much wealth.
Let's stop pretending this makes sense. No one should make 400 times more than the people who keep their business alive. Not by effort, not by talent, not by any stretch of basic human fairness. But that's exactly where we are. Today's CEOs earn more in a single day than many of their workers do in an entire year. Some earn more in an hour than their employees will ever see in a lifetime. And somehow, we've been taught to accept it, as if it's normal. Keep watching, because what you're about to see will make your stomach turn. The numbers aren't just unfair, they're outrageous. And by the end of this video, I'll show you exactly how we got here and why every working American should be furious.
Jesus, look at this massive gap between CEO pay and the typical worker pay since 1978. For the typical worker, their pay went up about 11%, and for the CEO, about 997%. Does it even pay anymore to be a worker? No wonder everyone wants to be an influencer or drop shipper, content creator, YouTuber, business owner.
People deserve to be paid a livable wage, enough to cover bills, and have some left over to enjoy life. That's what the point of working is. To my most recent knowledge, we have actor striking, director striking, animator striking, train worker striking, UPS striking, automotive striking, truckers striking, retail service striking, and there are people who still side with the millionaires and billionaires. The video I stitched is talking about how the workers want a 40% pay increase. The reason for that is because the CEO got a 40% pay increase. They're not asking for millions of dollars. They're asking for the same pay increase. And they're still getting a no. Not all CEOs and billionaires are bad. We say the same thing we said about cops. If you're silent and you're not going to condemn your fellow cop, you're part of the problem.
I'm not trying to come super hard at CEO pay.
Yeah.
But you do have to acknowledge this is a conversation that is occurring. And there have been ongoing questions for years because CEO pay has increased many, many times faster than wages, which have been stagnant for 40 years, right? CEO pay has increased 1,322% since 1978. CEOs were paid 351 times as much as the typical worker in 2020. So CEO pay is up 1,300%.
That kind of makes sense to me.
The average American wages have been flat for 40 years.
The value these individuals, these elite executives provide is even more valuable than the percentage more they're getting paid. The average employee at Amazon versus Andy, if he gets paid 350 times what they get paid, or even 1,000 times, I'd say he's 10,000 times more important than the average employee. His ability to do that, just like Steph Curry.
There is a talent power law.
Yeah.
100%. I really do believe that.
Listen, I get it. CEOs have stressful jobs, but can anybody tell me in what world it makes sense to pay them 3,700 times more than the people who are actually doing the work that makes them the money?
Is the job market really bad, or are CEOs just assholes? Because in 2022, the inflation was about 6.5%, and CEOs took a 7.7% raise, while the rest of us took about 3.6%. And if you're keeping track, that now means that CEO pay is 288 times their median employee pay. That's not minimum, that is median. So this is just your reminder that your low pay is not caused by the single mother in front of you using food stamps at the grocery store. It is your CEO who is robbing you.
Walmart CEO made over $25 million last year in total comp. That's over, listen, $12,000 an hour versus $1,750, which is $36,400 a year. $1,750, $36,400 a year. How many single moms can live on $36,000 a year in the U.S.? The living wage for the least expensive state in the union, Mississippi, I picked Jackson, Mississippi, for an adult and one child, the living wage is $30.28 an hour. That's from the MIT living wage calculator. So as we start to see these things, we need to research more, and we need to understand, oh wow, they're getting a pay raise. Well, it doesn't matter. They haven't had it for fucking decades in the first place, while the money's going directly to the top at a 700 times that.
So what you're saying is capitalism is awesome and the invisible hand of the market is amazing.
CEO daily pay was more than the average employee makes in a year. This is actually true. I looked this up. For the average pay of a CEO at a Fortune 500 company, it was somewhere in the low $60,000 a day range. $60,000 a day, considering a 5-day, 52-week work year. Holy shit. The typical employee in the front line, we're just going to talk about front line, $30,000 to $50,000 a year. So the average CEO at a Fortune 500 company, people with 15, 20, 30,000 employees, is making 50 to 100% more per day than their frontline employees are. And this is disgusting. Now, I know there's going to be CEOs of small companies that make $100,000 a year, $200,000 a year. No one's coming after them. But these big companies that are mega employers in this country, there is absolutely no reason for the people that lead these companies to be so top-heavy, to go into these meetings and tell their frontline employees that they need to be thinking about shareholder values. These people can do a bad job and leave with a golden parachute. These people could do a bad job, get fired, take a massive payout, and never work another day in their life if they just invested their money and lived off the interest. But yet, no, they got to go on to the next company and sell it off to private equity and beat their chest about how amazing they're doing and how they're great CEOs while people can't pay their rent and they can't afford groceries. It's the most disgusting type of greedy toxic, and I can't wrap my head around why half the country, because they secretly think that somehow they're going to get there themselves and then they'll get to be the ultra-rich supervillain, promote this type of thinking that is okay.
I will say it again. There is no such thing as an ethical billionaire. Billionaires only exist because they exploit and underpay their workers. Jeff Bezos has £131 billion. Yet the average pay for Amazon warehouse workers is £10 an hour. And at Amazon, a lot of the machines have monitors to record the productivity of employees, which actually means that a lot of employees miss bathroom breaks to avoid being fired. And all of this aside, I just feel like a lot of people don't understand how much money £1 billion is. 1 million seconds is 11.5 days, whereas 1 billion seconds is 31.5 years. Another example, if I was a billionaire and I spent £10,000 a day, it would take me 274 years to spend all of my money. It's an unspendable amount of money. And when there are people that are living on the street and struggling to find money for food and clothes, hoarding that much wealth in my eyes is evil.
The CEO to worker pay gap at America's largest companies was 344 to 1 last year. In 1965, the ratio was 20 to 1. The explosion in CEO pay relative to the pay of workers isn't because CEOs have become so much more valuable. They just game the system to line their pockets. And that is a fact. If anything, the workers are the most valuable because without us, they have no company. Like, I don't even know what CEOs really do. They just generate orders that don't make sense when you come down to it. Like, they have never worked on the bottom rung of the company, so they don't know how it actually works. You know what I'm saying? The people who actually work there know how it works. And then it's so frustrating when you get orders from up top saying do something this way, and you know it's the bad thing to do because obviously it's not efficient and it sucks and it makes the job 10 times worse or makes it harder to do, or it's not beneficial towards you or the customer. But at the end of the day, these CEOs are the rich guys that know what they're doing, and they're greedy and they're not sharing the wealth, and they're paying their employees pennies on the dollar. And then they have the audacity to be making billions of dollars a year. They will lay off thousands of employees like it ain't nothing to appease their shareholders.
And for all you fuckers that complained only a communist would want a city-owned grocery store because margins in grocery are so small. Yeah, but that net margin is after the CEO took his cut. And do you know what the Kroger CEO makes? 500 times what his worker makes. He makes $16 million against a worker making $31,000. Well, you know what? The profit margin's probably a whole lot better if you take that salary out of it. Is he working 500 times harder than the guy who's checking out your groceries? Maybe. I mean, the argument that it is inappropriate and cataclysmic and hellfire brimstone communists are coming because you want to lower grocery prices and suggesting it's impossible to lower grocery prices. Well, maybe not. But then I keep going back to, but Japan, their CEOs only earn 12 times as much as ours, and they're also capitalist. And they have a great standard of living. For Christ's sake, their toilets are heated. So why are they able to have such a reasonable balance?
You know, I was watching this video about the lifestyles of ultra high net worth individuals, and I found it kind of puzzling. You know, in traditional Japanese culture, the idea of making huge sums of money was always seen as a little bit distasteful. The average CEO in Japan makes about $250,000 a year, whereas in the United States, it's more like $1 million. And the top paid CEOs in the United States, maybe someone like Tim Cook making $770 million in a year. In Japan, it's $43 million for the top pay, but like number 2 is down to $12 million. I mean, doesn't it seem obvious that if you have a gigantic amount of money, you might be able to get an incremental increase in quality by spending 10 times as much on something, but it's going to be diminishing returns, right? If you have a 100-room house, you can only be in one room at a time. It seems interesting to me that, you know, these ultra high net worth individuals are tending to go to the same events constantly. So they might go to St. Bart's and then the Cannes Film Festival and then Art Basel or whatever. But that seems to be like a really constrained life, right? Like you can only go to these certain things and everyone has to do the same thing and so on.
Dr. Bronner's, for those of you who don't know, is a 150-year-old family-owned business. It was revealed that they have a 5-to-1 salary cap for their CEO. So the CEO never makes more than 5 times the salary of their lowest paid vested employee. They estimate that their current CEO makes around $238,560 a year. And according to an article in MarketWatch, S&P 500 CEOs made 268 times what the typical worker made last year alone.
This is a photo of a Seattle CEO who introduced a minimum salary of $70,000 for everybody in his company, and this included all 120 members of his team at the time, including janitorial workers as well as entry-level members. And this was not an easy feat for him to accomplish at the time, since he had to take a pay cut of almost $1 million. And all of this was completely voluntary, since he read a study at the time that showed that making at least $70,000 was good for a person's mental health. And this made a person's life a lot easier, since at this salary level, that person didn't have to worry about money anymore. And what's really interesting is that this move significantly increased the life quality of his team members. For example, before the $70,000 minimum wage, his team members were having 0 to 2 babies every single year. However, that number shot up to 10 babies every single year after this policy change. In addition to this, before the change, only 1% of his team members was able to afford a mortgage. However, now more than 10% of the company is able to own their own home. And this also meant that more than 75% of his staff was able to pay off any debt. And this man is considered by many to be the best CEO in America, and his company is still doing very well even today.
Don't ask about, what are we going to do if we don't get a bonus?
Zoom call from a CEO who canceled all employee bonuses but took a $5 million salary.
Questions came through about how can we stay motivated if we're not going to get a bonus? What can we do? What can we do? Some of them were nice and some of them were not so nice. So I'm going to address this head on. The most important thing we can do right now is focus on the things that we can control. None of us could have predicted COVID. None of us could have predicted supply chain. None of us could have predicted bank failures. But what we can do is stay in front of our customers, provide the best customer service we can, get our orders out our door, treat each other well, be kind, be respectful, focus on the future because it will be bright. It's not good to be in a situation we're in today, but we're not going to be here forever. It is going to get better. So lead by example, treat people well, talk to them, be kind, and get after it. Don't ask about, what are we going to do if you don't get a bonus? Get the damn $26 million. Spend your time and your effort thinking about the $26 million we need and not thinking about what you're going to do if we don't get a bonus. All right? Can I get some commitment for that? I would appreciate that. I had an old boss who said to me one time, you can visit Pity City, but you can't live there. So people, leave Pity City. Let's get it done. Thank you. Have a great day.
I could not wait to stitch this one. Because we know that people who are stressed about their finances are not going to perform as well. If you're living paycheck to paycheck and you're stressed about how you're going to put food on the table, you are 5.8 times as likely to not finish your daily tasks and 4.9 times as likely to have a lower work quality. You can't threaten someone's livelihood and then wonder why they're not performing for you.
It wasn't always like this. Back in the 1960s, CEOs made about 20 times more than their average worker. Still wealthy, but within the realm of reality. Then came the 1980s, and with it, the rise of shareholder capitalism. Suddenly, a CEO's job wasn't to build a stable company or take care of employees. It was to drive up the stock price at any cost. Layoffs, outsourcing, stolen pensions, all justified, as long as the numbers looked good on Wall Street. And with that shift came skyrocketing pay, not because CEOs started working 20 times harder, but because they gained the power to set their own price. They sit on boards, influence their own bonuses, and benefit directly from decisions that hurt everyone else. They say it's about performance, but some of the highest paid CEOs have run their companies into the ground and still walked away with millions. Meanwhile, the people cleaning their offices, running the registers, stocking the shelves, are struggling to survive. This isn't about envy. It's about justice. It's about dignity. It's about the simple idea that no one builds anything alone. And if your success is built on the backs of thousands, then they deserve more than just scraps. We've accepted the unacceptable for too long. This system doesn't reward hard work. It rewards power. And if we don't call it what it is, it will keep grinding people down while the top 1% soar. Because no matter how you spin it, no matter how you try to justify it, it just don't make sense.